All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Edmentum's Perspectives. It's our new virtual event series where we gather educators from across the country to talk about topics that are top of mind for all of you. Today, we're starting with teacher recruitment and retention. My name is Jason Mitchell, and I'll be your host for this series. And when I'm not hosting these events, I'm part of the leadership advocacy team, and we help identify innovative educators and promising practices. And we give those leaders a platform to share their strategies, their insights, expertise, and even practical tips. So I know most of you have been on Zoom webinars for quite a few years now, but there's just a few quick notes up on the screen. The main ones is that we encourage you to use the chat to get to know one another. You can also use the question and answer box on the bottom of your screen to submit questions to the panelist. And I'm going to try and get to as many of those as I can today. You're also going to see a few poll questions pop up as we talk. And if you have the chance to answer those, that'd be great because we'll get a sense of what's going on around your district and around the country. And we'll also share those answers out with the group. All right. I don't need to tell this group that attracting and retaining a stable teaching workforce is one of the most difficult parts of education today. Historically, teacher shortages have been the result of both declines in the number of candidates that are entering the teaching profession and high rates of teacher turnover. Both of these have been exacerbated by the pandemic. And unfortunately, teacher turnover has a huge cost. It undermines student achievement and the school improvement efforts. Today, I am super excited to welcome the three guests who bring their unique experiences and their perspectives to hiring and keeping great teachers. I want to give them a chance to introduce themselves. So first, we have Kelly Coash-Johnson. Kelly is the Executive Director at the American Association of School Personnel Administrators. Hi, Kelly. Welcome to the show. Do you want to just give us a little bit of a background of the lens that you look through?
Sure, absolutely. So AASPA, the American Association of School Personnel Administrators, we, of course, have been looking at this for several years. And then in the last few years, it has become one of our key issues that we're looking to address. In February, we hosted a National Educator Shortage Summit. 2 weeks ago, we were in DC advocating to lawmakers about the importance of some legislation that affects the teacher shortage. We're continually looking at retention efforts in our members, for our members, and best practices and resources. And certainly it is at the top of all of my members' minds right now as we enter into this school year.
Well, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for that overview. And also thanks for advocating for policies that support our educators. We really need it. Our next panelist is Dr. Alena Zachery-Ross. She is the superintendent at Ypsilanti Community Schools. Thanks for joining us today, Alena. Tell us a little bit about your community and the students that you serve.
Thanks, Jason, for having me. I'm excited to be here as the proud superintendent of the Ypsilanti Community Schools District right here in Ypsilanti, Michigan. We're right there 5 blocks away from Eastern Michigan University. I know a lot of people talk about Ann Arbor. That's just a mile away. And we just have a wonderful community of students, a diverse group of 3,700 students. We always range between 3,000 and 4,000 students with various demographics. You know, we have a wonderful array of students with great backgrounds, multiple language being spoken. And the important topic for me truly has been about how do we get the best educators in front of each and every one of our genius students and scholars. We know that it's important that we recruit, but also retaining the amazing staff members that just every day, day in and day out, work tirelessly above and beyond on behalf of our students. And so this topic is top of mind as we're preparing and getting staff ready for this beginning of the school year.
Well, the students in your community are certainly lucky to have you leading that charge. I love that term, scholars. That's great. All right. Our next guest is Dr. Mark Benigni. He's the superintendent of schools in Meriden, Connecticut. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the conversation. Tell us a little bit about the community that you support and serve.
Sure. Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here. And I'm the proud superintendent of Meriden, Connecticut Public Schools. This is year 13 for me here in Meriden. And Meriden's in central Connecticut. We're about 2 hours from Boston and 2 hours from New York City. So we split with Yankee and Red Sox fans this time of the year, or Patriot and Jet and Giants fans in the fall. But our district, a very diverse district, 75% of our students identify as non-white, 77% of our students qualify for free and reduced price meals. However, we're universal free breakfast and lunch. It's available for all. This topic is just so important. I don't think if we're ever going to move the needle on public education, the way we're going to do that is by having great teachers in every classroom. So nothing's more important than us making sure that we have enough candidates, enough quality teachers, and that we're providing the support they need to be successful.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing, all of you. Thank you for sharing your backgrounds. And I think what we know is that teachers are key to student success. It is those relationships that they have with their students that's so important, and we need to attract and retain them. So I wanted to launch a poll and get a sense from our attendees about their perspective on this, and talk a little bit about how they would describe the number of teacher vacancies in their districts compared to pre-pandemic times. So let's see, the poll just got launched, and here's a couple questions that we've got out there. All right, let's see. So teacher vacancies are up significantly, up slightly, about the same, or less than the pre-pandemic. All right, let's see. We've got just about 50% of the attendees participating in there. And overwhelmingly, it says teacher vacancies are up significantly, as well as up slightly. So that's about 85% of the attendees on that. So superintendents, Kelly, any surprises in that data?
Absolutely not. You know, many years ago, it used to be that there were pockets in the country that maybe didn't have a decrease in their applicants or suffered, but at this juncture, I can't think of a state that isn't.
Alena or Mark, any surprises on your side?
Not a surprise to me. You know, we realized before the pandemic, we saw this shortage coming. We were seeing it coming. We were doing some preparation, but I don't think if we talk to people generally, they would really have understood what a serious situation we're in. I think what might be tricky is during the pandemic, we saw people stay. We saw, you know, the retention rates were high. People weren't moving. People didn't know what to do. We didn't see a lot of movement. Now that everybody's back in person, that trend that we saw beforehand is quickly escalating. So that's why I can definitely agree with that survey in terms of some people it is significantly above, and the others are like, wait a minute. Well, the last 2 years, though, have been pretty good, but we have to remember everyone was pretty stagnant. So we need to go back to that whole 1920 at the beginning to look at that data. And now if we make those connections, we'll see we were on this trend, and now it's just really skyrocketing.
Yeah, you're definitely onto something. I'm going to touch on that on just a little bit of longitudinal data over time, and you're exactly correct on that. Okay. All right. Well, let me set a little bit of context, and then we'll get into some of the questions on that. And I think that what we know is that schools really just across the nation, they're having trouble filling these vacant teacher job openings. And Alena, as you were saying, it's been a problem that's been manifesting for years. But what we saw was during the pandemic, that was exacerbated. A study came out in February of 2022 from the Learning Policy Institute. And so they took a sample of California school districts, and 2/3 of those districts that were surveyed, they faced an increased number of vacancies over the pre-COVID-19 years. And not only that, they experience greater challenging in filling these key positions. So Kelly, I'm just, you look at it from a lens of a national perspective. How would you describe the current state of our teacher workforce? And more importantly, what concerns you the most as we approach this new school year?
Sure. So I'm not going to answer with just one word, but bad. No. So definitely, and I would agree with Alena that it's frustrating a little bit because I feel like we've been preparing for this for years and years and years. Right. And I'm glad now, finally, it seems to be getting a little bit more national attention. And we're really starting to look more at the data and pre-COVID data as well. Probably what concerns me the most is that as I talk to our members, so we have members from every state in the country. And in addition, we have 38 state affiliates that have their own organizations at a state level for HR leaders. And again, they're all suffering with not having filled all their positions yet. Mm-hmm. So even yesterday, talking to a group of HR directors, asking the question, have you filled all of your vacancies? And not a single person can say yes. And so what's concerning is we know that those classrooms won't be empty. So what are you going to do? And that's quality, right? So are we going to have to put substitute teachers in those classrooms? And will they have their full credentials in some cases? Are we going to have to put undue stress on our high-flying existing teachers to ask them to cover more in their classroom because we don't have, that vacancy filled? So those are the things that probably concern me. And then the pressure that then transfers over to my members is on the, we gotta work really hard to make sure that we have the supports in place. If it's going to be bad, then we need to address it through supporting our teachers, onboarding our teachers, mentoring the new teachers, anything that we can do to support what's going to happen this fall.
Thanks for that national perspective. I want to take it back to Alena, because you were talking about sort of trying to get ahead of it. You had noticed those long-term trends. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like right now and over the past 2 or 3 years and how that preparation paid off.
Yeah, we were very fortunate countywide. We saw this coming and worked together as districts. So we worked with our partners at Eastern Michigan University, and we created a parapro to teacher program, because just like Kelly said, if we've got to put people in the classroom, we need people who have relationships, people who have some formal training, not just a PD, formal training, and we've got to be able to give them support. So that program, we take our current parapros, we pay their tuition to go to Eastern Michigan, we give them mentors and support, and while they're already a parapro, they're getting skilled and built up, and so then they're certified. We did it in the areas of special ed. And so we knew that this is happening. So we are preparing. We had a program that was approved by our state. And now we're getting, that cohort is ready to graduate. And so, it takes time for these programs to be put in place and to work, but that's why we have to start early.
Absolutely. I'm glad you were visionary on that front. So think about it from that perspective. So you try to get ahead of it. For those teachers who did leave your system, what were some of the reasons? We see national trends like Kelly just spoke about, but regionally we also see some difference in there. So what were some of the factors that impacted your teachers?
Yes. First of all, just the whole overall stress, the stress on them, the stress from the pandemic, the students, I hear when our exit interviews, they talk about just feeling overwhelmed. And secondly, we're asking them to do more. They already had their plates full. As a matter of fact, their platters were full. And then we're saying, oh, and by the way, Yes. We want to make sure now that we're one-to-one, we want to continue with this blended learning. Isn't this wonderful? Yes, you were so innovative during the pandemic. We got to continue to push forward and do more. Yes, that's wonderful, but that for not every teacher, that's pretty overwhelming. They already had so much to do. And lastly, let's just be real. Now that there is the shortage, the competition and pay, we need to pay. I get it. We need to pay our teachers more. Let's just put that on the table. And so you see people, I'm like, Mark, we have 100% free and reduced. Our tax base is lower than some of our counterparts. And so if you can go and still if you have to deal with stress, if you have to deal with more, people are going to districts that can pay the top dollar. And we know that all of our teachers, all of our educators deserve much more pay. But that is certainly one of the factors.
Yeah, it most certainly is. And we're going to revisit that subject as we move through this conversation again, because we've got some data that points to exactly what you're talking about. Mark, from your perspective, how does your situation compare to Alena's in Meriden?
Sure. I think Kelly and Alena said it best. We're not going to solve this problem by forcing our current staff to take on more and do more. We're going to create a bigger problem when we do that. I think we've been fortunate when others said no to college partnerships, to student teaching placements, to interns. Meriden said yes. We only closed down when the governor forced us to be closed. Otherwise, in-person learning was always an option in Meriden. So I think that put us in a decent spot. But I don't think there's a district in the nation that's not struggling with recruiting special education teachers or some of these hard to fill areas, physics and some world language vacancies as well. So we're not in a perfect position. We tried to get out in front a little bit ourselves, especially with the hiring process. So I probably would put were teacher vacancies slightly over pre-COVID. But I think what we need to look at is the reason for this problem. And I think some of it, COVID opened up personal reasons for folks to leave the profession, to retire earlier than maybe they first thought. Maybe they had someone in their family really get sick from COVID symptoms. Maybe they looked at their own situation and said, hey, I'm missing out on things I wanted to do. I need to do that now. And then I think there's been some professional pressure. I don't think we respect teachers and educators in our public schools the way we need to. But I also think we're asking more and more of them. So they're not health experts. Now they're being asked to take on that responsibility. We're saying, these last 2 years have been difficult. So make sure you're re-engaging and catching your students up. And the added pressure on them professionally is maybe making them consider either not going into this profession, leaving the profession, or retiring early from the profession. So I think all of us need to make sure we elevate our teachers, we show them the respect that they deserve, and that we work with community partners, and that we don't see this COVID recovery as another thing for education systems or our teachers to handle.
Right. It was so evident towards the end of the pandemic when just looking at student engagement and if they were connected to their school, the importance of teachers in this equation. What I appreciate about this, sort of this silver lining of all of this, is we recognized just how critical they are to student success. And so I think that's helpful. We had a really interesting question from one of our audience members who asked, and I'd be curious if any of you have any data on this, that says, are there higher rates of teacher retention among those who teach in a traditional, like in-person environment versus those who teach online or in hybrid learning? Do any of you have any either data or anecdotes on that?
I can tell you for us, we really spoke to what I'm sharing with you today really has come from hearing our teachers. And I think that's that piece of why for us, my anecdotal piece is during the pandemic, we always had three modes. We had an in-person, except for when the governor, just like my governor closed down, we had a blended where the second year we kind of started remote and then slowly came back in, and we had a total online. Teachers could choose and parents can choose. after last year was the first year we had what we call is Ypsi Connected. It is a online school, but it's a live teacher. They come in and do project-based hands-on learning. And we did that because we surveyed our teachers and we surveyed our families and found that there were people that still did not feel like they could come back, either because they had health challenges, because they were dealing with family members. They did learn so much over the pandemic. So given that option, I was able to keep some teachers who would have maybe taken an FMLA, who maybe were having some challenges, and those persons applied. We used a rubric, and so we went from no students in that building to there's over 300 students in this building. So we're serving and meeting a need, and I think that's what we continuously have to do if we really want to pull in all types of teachers. If we want to, be creative, like Kelly said, to make sure we have certified teachers there, we've got to kind of stretch ourselves and look at what other industries have done. I know it's hard with our seat time requirements and all those other things, yet it's up to us to be creative. We've got to put, again, those best teachers, and some of them they had the challenges and they needed an online option. So I know that for me, that piece of retaining some teachers I wouldn't have been able to retain helped by providing that option.
Fantastic. Same with students. We see that very same dynamic playing out. So really, really smart thinking there. Mark, from your perspective, was there any difference in retention rates between the different modalities?
No, we did everything we could to keep all of our teachers. We gave it parent choice, and we had probably 30% of our parents choose a remote option. And so that allowed us to accommodate teachers who didn't feel comfortable coming back, had their own health complications or risk, and we were able to keep everyone on board that way. We basically ran a separate distance learning elementary school. For middle and high school, it was a little bit trickier, but we were able to accommodate our staff and our people. And Connecticut's a heavy union state, but we have terrific partnership with our unions. They were there on that first Sunday discussing what are we going to do as this pandemic broke, and they were definitely partners in how we could support their staff and ultimately our students and families.
That's great. And then Kelly, any either anecdotal or quantitative data from your side of the equation?
Sure. Right now, there is no formal data that I'm aware of. And most of that, especially from a national perspective, is because districts are still in the position of transitioning to maybe hybrid models where part of their schooling is in person and part of it's online, et cetera. I will tell you that the idea of retention and including flexible scheduling models for our educators is huge for retention efforts overall. So I imagine when the data does catch up to the reality, we're going to see that was a very positive impact in keeping some individuals that really thrived in that environment.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So we were just speaking with the superintendent last week, who was telling us that they started offering these hybrid and remote options, and they noticed that all of their kids were starting to log on at like 9 o'clock, because that was when they got back from work. And then thinking about same thing for their teachers. How are they going to have teachers supporting students at different times of the day? Is that an option? And just thinking about that flexible work environment as well as those flexible learning environments. So it's just a really interesting time to be in education today. All right, tell you what, let me do another quick poll, and let's get a sense from the audience about the difficulty, I didn't get that word out, the difficulty that your district is having with filling teacher vacancies. So is it significant? Is it some? Is it typical of a regular year, or you having no difficulty filling teacher vacancies? All right, let's see. I'll give y'all just a second. I need my my Jeopardy music. All right, looks like we're most of the way in there. So, well, pretty much 100% of you said that it's either significant or some difficulty filling teacher vacancies. So that's a pretty good indication that there's a lot of difficulty out there. I mean, we actually know that a lot of factors play into that. And Kelly, as you were talking about, it's national policy, it's state level policy, local policies. Both Alena and Mark talked about compensation, working conditions, and a lot more. I think what was interesting is that we've kind of noticed that there's a few trends that really run across the country. And one of them is that the teacher pipeline is smaller than it's been in decades. And Alena, you were ahead of the curve on noticing that. And in addition to that, we also know that as our students came back and we offered these flexible learning environments, that we needed to provide even more support to our students. And then in addition to that, we've got a higher rate of teachers who are leaving the profession just because of all of the pressures. And I think, Alena, you used the word, it's a platter, right? It's not their plates full, their platters full. So we know that shortages in hard to staff subjects, those world languages that you talked about, they continue to be widespread, severe. So Kelly, from your perspective, when you're out and about observing teacher vacancies, even beyond those sort of hard to staff areas, what are you seeing out there?
As far as the pipeline goes, first of all, I'm a positive person by nature, so I'm going to immediately move to the wonderful things that I'm seeing, which are, a lot of what Mark said, the partnerships that are happening between school districts and their higher ed institutions or their alternative certification programs in their states has been remarkable to see that grow. The partnerships that they are having with their state departments of education, where we used to only call them when we were mad or angry or had a problem, working with them more on a level of, can you help me with certification for these paraprofessionals in a more, accessible, equitable way, right? So I'm seeing a lot of that, and I have to believe that is going to move the needle, and that we're going to be able to see that more. AASPA I'm big about bringing together, those two particular groups in particular, because they've all been working on this issue in a silo. If you talk to higher ed, if this webinar had higher ed folks on it, they would be talking and spinning their wheels about not getting students, and they can't recruit students to come into their programs. Right. And it's public schools' fault because we're not encouraging students. And if you talk to departments of ed, they're spinning their wheels about, data and accreditation and evaluations and student achievement. And it's somebody's, else's problem too. But if we really work on those partnerships and talk together, there's so much that we can agree upon and so many things that we can change together if we just know what each other's pain points are.
When you think about it at that macro level across the nation, how would you describe sort of the readiness of our teacher workforce as well as their health?
Certainly, their readiness is going to be okay. But what I say is that there's a lot of pressure on school districts, human capital leaders, to make sure that the supports are in place to drive that readiness. I'm not going to sit back and say that the colleges aren't preparing our teachers. I'm going to say, what you're getting, and it's really the school district's responsibility to take those candidates and those teachers and figure out how to get them to fit into the culture. Because we also know culture is huge when it comes to both student achievement and retention. And so there's just, there's a lot of pressure, but I think we're up for the challenge to do that. And as far as their wellness, that again is something that will fall on the backs of of the school systems to make sure, again, that they have the supports in place to support our teachers' wellness. And there's some really creative things that we can do just to make everybody's lives a little bit better. And in HR, the big thing is that your job is from hired to retired. It is not in the recruitment. It is not in the hiring. It is in everything and that happens to a candidate or an employee in your school district. You're with them all the way through their journey. And the folks that see that and understand that are the ones that are being most successful.
Alena and Mark, any additional comments to that?
I would say definitely for us, get ahead of the hiring process. If I know I'm going to have 30 vacancies on any given year, I may not be able to tell the candidate specifically which elementary school or what grade level, but I know I'm going to have an opening. Get ahead in the hiring has been helpful for us. I think Kelly did a great job of talking about the partnerships. We have some terrific partnerships, and I think higher ed is recognizing the same problem we are, and they're looking for partners to kind of take this on. So I can get 8 or 10 students from one school come into one of my schools and really make a large impact and be there. I think the state is recognizing that there's problems, and the state agencies, so they're issuing durational shortage area permits. And I would say this, I agree with Kelly, like part of our job is to make sure that we're supporting whoever we're putting in front of our students. So if I get a candidate who maybe didn't go through a traditional college program, I may have to work differently with that candidate, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to be a very successful teacher and that they can learn it in the process. So we have to think a little bit differently about how we're onboarding, how we're supporting our teachers. And what we're asking our teachers to do has changed anyway. So we should be looking differently at our whole training models of how we work with our staff and what type of support they need. Something that we've done successfully, just as our students want choice in their learning, our teachers want choice in their professional development and learning as well. So we're offering more tiered and teacher choice because our teachers are just like our students. They're all at different levels, and we need to make sure that we support them at the level they're at.
Totally agree with you on that. Alena, anything you would add to that?
Definitely. I was resonating totally with Kelly the whole time. Because we are a college town, we really take advantage of it. And so our slogan for our talent management team is YCS, where you belong. And we start them with pre-student teaching. So all of them, just like Mark, they have cadres of students coming into our district, and they're supported by the EMU folks. They also start right then. We allow them to come to any professional development that we offer for no cost because we want to start that relationship. Once they're a student teacher, we start talking to them early about working at YCS. Don't they see that they belong here? As a matter of fact, we believe in that so much, not just for your student teaching. The methods courses for Eastern are held in the building during the school day. So they have their classrooms. So they have practicum experiences when they have their lesson. Then they go out into the classrooms to look for, are these practices actually happening? And then we got a U.S. Department of Ed grant, so we can give them a stipend, early signing bonus if you sign in with us. So midway through the year, when we had those student teachers who were graduating, many of them just stayed in their same building and worked in our district. And then, as you talked about, just keeping them to the end. So two things with that. One of the things we did was compassion resilience circles. We did them for parents, but we did it for staff. And so that they can have a space that they can come, they can talk, their 6-week sessions. And we know we just got to do those kinds of things, as well as many of them just need support in terms of where am I with my retirement, having conversations, because oftentimes they don't know, why is it a benefit if I stay in this system for me to stay? And a person just last year said, why didn't anybody tell me? I'm like, you're leaving now? You know, you just stayed this many years in education. Here's the benefit to you and to your family. And so we've got to get personal and being able to support the thinking of our teachers, because they're amazing, but they got a lot going on. And so we just feel like at YCS, you belong. And we want to start with you way at the beginning and stay with you until the end of your career.
Boy, that's fantastic. I'll go back to my earlier statement about silver linings. So Kelly, I kind of see things in that same positive vein. And I think that this innovation and approach to both recruitment and retention and training for teachers it's amazing what's come out of this new environment. And I think you all are just doing a remarkable job as educators. In addition to that, I sort of see coherence not only within the LEAs and third-party organizations that are experts in that field, but we also see better coherence with state departments in there. And there's some pretty innovative ones. I was speaking with the Louisiana State Department a little earlier today, and they're doing just really smart work and outreach to their teachers and supporting them in ways that they haven't in the past. So it's really cool stuff. I wanted to get a sense from the audience and another poll to talk about, like, what's the single biggest challenge that impacts your readiness or your teacher's readiness for the new year. So we've sort of discussed it as a group, but I'd love to get your input on this as a participant. All right, we'll give you just a second to start filling in your answers. We'll give our speakers a second to take a water break. All right, let's see. It looks like we've got quite a few answers on here. So teacher turnover because of teacher retirement or resignation, lack of teacher pipeline and qualified candidates, and concern over teacher working conditions. So looks like almost 2/3 of it is lack of teacher pipeline and qualified candidates to fill teacher vacancies. Teacher turnover is about 20%, and then concern over this new environment. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on, so I have to lean in real close to that. But to the panel, any surprises on that?
No, I will tell you that my motto is retention is the new recruitment. And while I'm big with that teacher pipeline and such, I'm a big proponent that says you've got to get your retention under control, in the sense that, you know, it's one thing to say that you're losing teachers over retirements, but why are you losing, you know, other teachers? Because you can recruit and you can fill all day long, but if you can't keep it, it's not going to mean anything, a hill of beans, if you will. So, yeah, I understand this. And I was tickled to see that compensation and benefits didn't pop up, because we're big about it's not the silver bullet, right?
Right.
And I couldn't agree more. Definitely, at the end of when you're talking $15,000 or $20,000 more, we may lose a candidate, but that's not. When we're losing that candidate, we accept that, we move on. But I do agree with retention. And when we talk to our staff, what they want are advancement opportunities. They want PD opportunities. They want time to collaborate with one another. They want a chance, you know, we put some programs in place where I'm charged educators. Those are our teachers who are really leading our digital transformation. We have a leadership academy for those who they don't know that they want to be a principal, but they might want to be a leader in their own building. We put that program in place. We honor and celebrate our teachers. When their cohort of students perform well, we know it's because of them. We honor them just like we honor our students. We try to create a culture where innovation is valued, respected, where we encourage our teachers to take a chance, try something new. And when something doesn't go well, it's okay. We just own it and move on. It's funny, as we talked about last year, it was Team MPS. This year, it is going to be We Are Meriden Public Schools, and we want folks to take great pride in working in our system. And we can create that type of environment by making sure that we value the relationships that we have with one another, but also with our students and families, and really take time to honor our students, but also honor our staff that's doing amazing work as well. And like I said earlier, we don't want to force our teachers to take on more, but we want to give them the opportunities if they choose to take on more. So teachers will come to us and say, I want to teach this 6th class because it's a passion area for me. And a fraction of their salary, what it costs us to do that, I'd love to run a Saturday enrichment program for the district because I love space and technology. We honor those requests. We find ways to support our teachers in doing that. Our students benefit from it. Our teachers make a little additional money on the side, and everyone's happy, especially our community and families. So I think really the teacher voice, we need to listen to it. They are our experts, and they're the ones who are going to make a difference for our students.
Alena, anything you'd add on to that?
Yeah, I think that, again, that's that silver lining. We have learned so much over the pandemic about what teachers say they want and what they value. And so the same thing as Mark talked about, we just were very fortunate to get a U.S. Department of Ed grant. And so we have a Rising Leaders program, and we have a formal one that pulls them out and they are able to shadow principals. But then we also have the informal Leadership Academy. They also talked about, we had a sunshine committee, and every month we have something, either Family Feud, games against each other. This year we're starting off the school year, instead of the opening day in an auditorium hearing a speaker, we're doing, it's a family reunion. So we're going to have t-shirts, where you belong. We're going to have bounce houses for adults, not children. We're going to do different stations where you might learn something about YCS. Instead of saying, here are the new administrators, they'll be over doing a toss game or something like that. And so we just have to think differently. We can learn and have fun. We've got to figure it out. And then we also, talking about that care, we put an Oasis room in every building, one for the students, but one for the staff. And they created it. We gave them the budget. One of my mottos is people support what they help create. And so they created their unique Oasis rooms, and just having it there, they don't go as much. I'm like, it's always empty. But people say, no, I went in there and there are massage chairs and the lighting is different and there's snacks in there. And so we didn't do that pre-pandemic. And I, shame on me as a leader. I just never thought about that it seems so small, but those are the things that they say they care about. The rewards, like Mark said, we have we call it Grizzly Awards. It's like the Oscars. And even during the pandemic, we literally drove to the house and they got the Oscar. And so we did it in person before. Now we did it online. We're back in person, and they love it. They nominate each other, have fun. And we've got to bring the joy back. As Goli Muhammad talks about, the joy of learning for our students, we've got to bring that joy back for our staff as well.
Yeah, boy, that culture is so important. Mark, you look like you're ready to jump in. Go ahead.
All I wanted to say is I love the concept of the Oasis room for students and staff. And I'd warn everyone that Alena's been practicing her cornhole game, so watch out. Choose her as your partner. Don't compete against her. That's all I'm going to say.
That's right. I watched these two actually sort of duke it out in a game, and it was a fierce competition all the way around. So, but I think actually what you're driving at is that this culture, it's a place where people want to be, and that creating that culture within your system that's engaging, that's responsive, that listens to educators, like. It's more, it's funny because I was going to ask a question about compensation, like is compensation like the driver? But what we saw in that last poll is it's not. And I mean, it's a factor in the equation, but what you all are talking about, like people are leaning into that and they want to be part of that. It's super exciting. It's just, thank you for sharing those things. Kelly, from your perspective, when you think about, all right, at the macro level, so you're engaging in DC with policymakers, what type of policy can help with the retainment, with retention, with supporting that pipeline into our industry?
Right. So that is tough at the national level because, a couple of major issues that impact the educator shortage are very state specific. So teacher compensation is very state specific. And so is teacher certification. It varies from every state to state. And I like to remind folks that you do not want the federal government meddling in your business when it comes to teacher compensation and teacher certification. because you know your communities, you know your states, and you know the ability for them to make change to those regulations. But what the federal government can help us in is in areas like the bills that we're supporting currently involve tax credits for teachers. If that's another way to address, a compensation is through potentially providing teachers tax incentives. The big one for us is loan forgiveness and tuition assistance. And that's not just for our current teachers, but mostly for those paraprofessionals, because that is our biggest pipeline potentially. And so how can we retain resources to support them in becoming full-fledged certified teachers in our districts? And so that's an area. And then ultimately, pumping money into grants and programs that encourage those partnerships with colleges and universities, and that supports retention efforts for districts. So I don't necessarily know that they're going to give out money for overall just here's money, go recruit, right? But I do think that they can really support us at the national level with funding to work on some of our retention efforts, if you will.
And speaking of that, in the last week, I was meeting with a leader from NAPSI who was talking about recruiting more people of color into the workforce, into that pipeline. And I wanted to see, Mark or Alena, if either of you had any insight into that. When you think about recruiting for your own systems, how can you make sure that we have a diverse environment that represents the students that are in our systems?
And quickly, two things that we've done here is we're a very diverse system. So if we can get our high school students considering education as a career, that's how we'll build that pipeline. And many times, where do they want to come back to? The school system that they were a part of. So I think that helps. So whatever we can do to create education clubs and work with outside agencies to prepare our high school students to consider a career in education, whether that's offering credit earning education classes in our high schools, which we have a couple with college partners. I think that's one side of it. I think also, it's a competitive market for everyone. So getting out there and when we meet a diverse candidate who we think will be great for this, we're offering a contract right away. It can't be a long thought out process. So I think also we need to work with our state to incentivize those to go into education. And Kelly touched on a few ways the federal government can do that. Our state can do the same. The other thing is, how do we support current staff members? So when you look at our certified staff and how diverse that is in comparison to maybe our classified or our support staff, maybe if our diversity in our support staff is far greater than in our certified teaching staff, how do we work with that staff to consider getting them certified and credentialed so they can be our teachers as well? Whether that's, again, partnering with higher ed. Relay has a great graduate education program that we work side by side with. Working with our unions, sometimes we have paras that have their bachelor's degree but never got certified to teach. How can we work with our union to get them on a day when we need a sub? Let's let that para be the sub and the para. They'll get great experience. They'll make a little bit additional money. And they may say, hey, this is kind of fun. I can do this. And then we can work with them on a pathway to getting certified to teach as well.
So smart. It's what we know about teachers who don't feel prepared in the classroom is if they don't feel prepared when they walk in, like their retention is way lower. Like that 2/3 of them leave if they don't feel prepared. And I think what you just talked about were some really smart strategies in that vein to make sure that our workforce feels that level of preparation. Alena, from your perspective, how do you support that pipeline of diverse educators within your system?
Yeah, I know I already shared about our para to teacher program, but what I want to say is we can't get all of the paras who are interested. There's an application process. However, those who thought, who said, I'm applying, we have to give them something else too, right? Because this is the diverse candidates. They already are there. We've got to help find a way to get them certified. Secondly, is how we treat our BIPOC staff already. Like, it's word of mouth. The people who I have that are diverse in my district mostly came because somebody else told them, hey, I'm having a bad experience over here in this district. I'm the only one, or I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel supported. And they're like, well, at YCS, we're family, so that word of how we treat our current staff, how do we support them? Do we even know how they're feeling? And so making sure we have that avenue. And then even if we don't have it yet, being explicit about how we plan on supporting. So like, we're working with our city about housing opportunities. There's new development. We're like, hey, we've got a grant. Can we partner? And then you designate that for one of our teachers, new teachers. And then we can specify it. Maybe it's from a demographic, like they're from Ypsi. Most likely, as Mark said, if you're from there, there's that diversity. And looking at alternative certs. So for example, in Michigan, we have what our state department did was say, here's all of the teachers who have here's all the people who have a certification that are currently not teaching. And so we got the list of those persons, and then we targeted those, and they call it Proud Michigan Educators, PME. And so then they help us with, it's so expensive to get certifications and to get your license. So with that being removed, we're like, they already have a certification. They probably gave up after between those first 5 years. And if we reach out and say, hey, I think you're good, we tap into them. I think we got 3 from that last year, but 3 is 3, and they were the diverse candidates, and they already had certifications. They were out there, but they had just given up teaching for one reason or another.
All right, so we're ending we're coming close to the ending of this, and so I'm going to give our audience members additional time to type in questions. And while people are typing in questions to our panelists, I'm going to throw a little curveball at you and ask, because I love to end webinars with a positive look forward. So I'm going to ask each of you what this silver lining was over the last couple of years, like what you would take away from this when it comes to teacher recruitment and then preparation and retention, just in general. When you think about that, what is your silver lining? So let me check for questions. I don't see, let me make sure I got this right. Okay, all right, let's see. All right, oh gosh, I missed that. So one says, I just love this vulnerability. It says, I'm just overwhelmed with the shortage of teachers at the start of school in August. Where do I start? Any advice from our panelists?
I think something Kelly said earlier, make sure you start by making sure that you're letting the teachers that are there know how important they are and how much they're valued, or your problem will get even greater. My advice initially would have been, but it probably should have started, is hire immediately, hire the best, let them know all the support you're going to have in place. And to me, supports need to be grade level coaching and choice PD for our professionals. And then you've talked a lot about climate and culture. The work, we spend so many hours at work, it has to be a place where there's still fun, there's laughs, there's challenges, there's support. And everyone likes to feel needed and valued. So let your team know how important they are.
Excellent. All right. So there's a question about, it's an interesting staffing question. It says, are others having to use teachers to support non-teaching vacancies or vice versa? And if so, what does that look like?
Alena, I don't know if you want to jump in. We have not used teachers for any other area. We definitely have been creative with, at times, with who we put in front of a classroom, as we started earlier. And I think, like anything else, sometimes I think it's been a great experience. We've had parents say, I don't know why I didn't go back to get my teaching cert all these years ago, like I can do this. And maybe they just needed to be needed and give it a shot. We've had college students who came home and we were using them to help us say, I never thought of education as a career, but now I'm going back. That's what I'm majoring in because I just love the feel and the energy in a school. I haven't felt this way. I don't want to be in a cubicle all day. I want to be around people. This is a lot of fun. So in some ways, the silver lining for us is that just as folks in the rhetoric around education, it hasn't always been positive. It's allowed us to try new things, and some of those things are definitely going to be great practices moving forward. We'll never require our teachers to show up to just sit in their own room and go online and do their PD. Well, I don't care if they do it at home. I don't care if they do it at one of our beautiful beaches. I care that they learn and they want to get better. Our parent-teacher conferences, COVID forced us to do those virtually. And, we've always said our parents care. Well, they do. It just was so difficult for them to leave a job that they might have to not get paid when they go, drive 20 minutes, struggle to find parking for a 10-minute meeting with their teacher. Why weren't we allowing them to do those virtual parent-teacher conferences on their phones for years? So there's definitely some positives. We just all as a group need to remember that there's good to come from every bad. And I'm excited about the future, not deterred from it at all.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's see. We've got 3 minutes left, and I want to make sure all of you have your chance to do your silver lining. But there is there was one question, and Alena, you I think you've already started to touch on this, but it says, what's the best way to support these folks as they start the school year with potentially very limited experience?
Yeah, that's part of what we've used teachers for. It kind of goes with both of those questions because our teachers have recreated so many things. For example, during the summertime, they've taken our Gholdy Muhammad lesson plans to align with our HMH ELA units. And they were the ones who said, if we get new teachers or if we get a teacher that leaves in the middle of the year, we want to say, here are the power standards. Here's how you connect it with Gholdy Muhammad. Here's how you can put it on a platform that we all can go into and put information in. They created that so they can be that mentor to the other teachers. They're the ones who can explain it. They've learned how to ask great questions. And so when you talk about what in the past, we would have just had a curriculum person do that or the curriculum team. Now with the teachers doing that, now it's their expertise. They're able to really support the new teachers and provided them with those chunks, a framework of those lessons so that they can know it didn't come from up high. It came from teachers creating this. And if they have a question, they can just go to the other second grade teacher and say, what did you mean by this? Do I need to do the whole thing? And so we've got to give structures that don't rely on just administrators or our mentors, but rely on that team and bring that interdependence, the sense of belonging. And so that's like almost my silver lining because when they do that, when I talk about people support what they help create, they wanted to work on that all summer. I know those teachers aren't going anywhere because they were engaged and now they want to see their work come to fruition. And so, as Mark said, if you make sure that authentically that these teachers know that they're valued, they're going to support their colleagues. They're going to make sure that they're successful. And so that's part of, we have to be intentional about how do we provide that space and then give them we can put stipends and compensation with that to really show that here's what we value.
Well, that's a great silver lining. I love it. Let's see, Kelly, would you add a silver lining to?
Yeah, no worries. So I'm proud to tell you that I have a kid that is entering the education college this fall. And I told them, I said, this is so exciting for you. You are on the cusp of an educational revolution. And that is where we are. We are in an area where we can't go back. We cannot go back to the way it was. And so we're in the driver's seat to how it looks and how the future looks. And I work with the most amazing people that really do still want the best for our kiddos. And so those shifts in how we look at a lot of things are going to be critical. And the future does look good. I really think it does. And so I'll put our white paper from the Educator Shortage Summit, which does talk about some little things that you can do as a PK-12 district. And so if that's helpful, it's open source. So you can take a look at that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. Mark, you wrap us up with your last silver lining.
I feel like I did, but I'll say again that education still is the great equalizer. It's how folks will get ahead in life. It matters so much. If you want a career where you can really make a difference and do something meaningful, education is the spot. And there's no better place than working in our public schools across this nation.
Cheers to that. What a great way to end the conversation. I want to say thank you to Alena, to Kelly, to Mark. Thank you to all of you who came in to get a little bit of a perspective today. We're going to send an email today with a recording of this session, as well as any of the links to the information that we sent out. Thank you for those of you who engage with Edmentum and use some of our solutions to help solve some of these challenges, whether it's our instructional services or it's some of our programs to assess students, identify where they are, and connect them with targeted instruction. Our next virtual event in the Perspective series is going to be on August 24th, and we'll talk a little bit about how leveraging high dosage tutoring supports students academically and with motivation, including factors that districts should consider as they begin to implement a robust tutoring program and the challenges that they've also encountered along the way. There's a lot of good information, and a lot of districts are focused on high impact tutoring. So please join us for that. We're going to drop that into the link. And with that, another sincere thank you to our educators. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the hard work that you do every single day. And Mark, I think you said it well, like the great equalizer is education. Alena, Kelly, Mark, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you. This is Jason Mitchell with Edmentum signing off. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.